Hello, boys and girls. Well, today is the 8th. Tomorrow is Victory Day Parade. The Germans actually surrendered on the 8th in the late afternoon, and it was supposed to have been, by legend anyways, at least that's how I've read it, joint announcement was supposed to happen on the 9th, and some American journalist ran out and telegraphed back to New York on the 8th that the war in Germany had surrendered and the war was over, which is where it went from the 8th for the Americans. And he undercut Eisenhower, by the way. So Eisenhower basically destroyed this guy's career going forward as revenge for taking the steam out of Eisenhower's sails, so to speak, or the wind out of Eisenhower's sails. So anyways, we have lots to talk about. Let's begin with, because there's a lot going on. It takes a little while to really get your mind around a lot of the stuff because the insanity level is high. This video is probably going to be a bit long. Sorry. So first of all, let's talk about Hodges, the terrorist enabler, who, honestly speaking, there should be a warrant out open for Hodges' arrest. Never mind, he's an idiot who, talk about this guy got to be a 3-star general. This mental midget got to be a 3-star general. I mean, the guy has been wrong on everything, that he opens his mouth and he's just wrong. So he's either a total sellout that's just reading the script, very likely, and making money off of it. So in other words, he has absolutely zero integrity, zero honor, and zero everything else. Or he's an absolute moron that believes the things he says. Well, on this call, he was talking that he would absolutely encourage Zelensky to strike the parade, which in this case really is a civilian target, even though there are military personnel there, tons of civilians, and let's consider just some of the world leaders. Now, obviously, Lukashenko from Belarus is going to be there. He from China, Vucic from Serbia, Lula from Brazil, Fico from Slovakia, who they try to block him and Vucic's flights. So a NATO country, that's the Baltics, NATO countries blocked another NATO country's flight, and by the way, not just a flight, but the leader's flight, the president's flight across their territory. That's what NATO is all about. There you go. There's NATO unity right there. Lulon is from Vietnam, Salesi from Ethiopia, El Sisi from Egypt. So you get the major nations in all of the continents are coming to Russia. Well, Russia's the major nation in Europe. We own a fourth of Europe. So when they say, "Oh, the Europeans," we own more of Europe than any of the Europeans. And we have owned it since most European nations were nothing but tribes running around. Russia was considered a single land, even though there were different princes vying for the power, and first in Kiev, and then in Kiev and Vladimir, and then just in Vladimir. Vladimir's to the east of Moscow, by the way, for those who don't know the geography here. Since about the 1200s, it was considered one land. So whenever the different nomads would come invading in large hordes, or the Poles, or the Hungarians, or whomever, or the Germanics, the German Crusaders would come in large force, all these different Russian princes who were fine warring with each other, because there were 4 lines of Ruriks descended from Rurik, who all wanted the throne. And in between those lines, inside those lines, there's also people fighting it out. They would all drop all their problems with each other, unify in one force, throw out the invaders, and then go back to incessant semi-civil war. It wasn't a feudal system, because it was actually a very unfeudal system. I'll go in a separate video on the system that was in the Slavic lands, and how the Russian government modified itself or over time. Russia was never really a feudal system, and whatever elements of feudalism it had were wiped out by Ion Veliki, Ivan. Well, Ivan's the modern word. Ion, from what the apostle's name, Ion, which then in the West became John, in the East eventually became Ivan, but it's Ion. Ion was the word that was used up to realistically around the Soviet times. Ivan is a more modern term, a version of the name. Ion Veliki, Ivan, or Ivan the Great, John the Great, if you wanted to use Western conventions, who was the third, who was the grandfather of Ion Grozny, Ivan the Feared. Not the terrible, the feared. British propaganda that rewrote as the terrible. Grozny means feared, and the British feared him, and everybody else feared him. And no, he didn't murder his son. Yes, it's a nice painting, by the way, commissioned by Russian liberals. Absolutely did not murder his son, Ivan Ivanovich, who died of fever. Yeah, people tended to die of fever. They kind of had a little problem with no antibiotics. So, yeah, okay. I'm not even going to go into that. All the people will say, oh, everybody was healthy and lived to be 1,000 years old before medicine showed up. Yeah, okay. Sure they did. I'm not going down that road. Not in this video anyways. But yeah, so you've got all these world leaders coming. And then you've got Hodges, who is showing moral and some could say political support to an obvious terrorist regime, a dictatorial, Gestapo-style terrorist regime in Kiev that has no problems, at least threatening. We'll see if they'll carry out. I'll be there on site, so if something happens, I'll be videotaping it. And it'll be, and they're threatening terrorist attacks, absolute terrorist attacks. And since the West is not saying a word against it, the West are morally supporting terrorist attacks. But then, I mean, why should we be surprised? You've got Macron taking Al-Jilani as a state guest with everything there, all the pictures and everything, a state guest of France. Al-Jilani, whose people are committing genocide against Christians, Alawites, and Shia in Syria, a known terrorist. But hey, the West likes terrorists, as long as they serve them. The Israelis are complaining, but why are the Israelis complaining? Yeah, no problem supporting Al-Jilani's Islamics while they were murdering, while the Syrian government was in place. You gave them support, you gave them medical help, allowed them into Israel. Now they're complaining. Oh, well, yeah, because, Okay, so being a hypocrite is a typical Western political standard. There is no standard. It's I am a whore to whatever circumstance fits me at the moment. That's the whole system of honor and everything else, and justice that is the West. Just be a whore for whoever fits you at the moment. So Hodges is an absolute, he's a war criminal. He's a terrorist enabler. By his own admission, by his own words, in video format. And there needs to be a case opened against him. At least in the world court, or at least from the Russian side, I would have opened a case right there against him, criminal court, put it into Interpol. He's a war criminal. He's a terrorist criminal. He's a terrorist enabler. I wonder if he's even given money to them, or taken money from them. So there's that. But that's the whole Trump White House now. Trump, it's Trump 2.0 or Biden 2.0. It's getting harder and harder to tell. Very hard to tell, as a matter of fact. You've got Scott Bassett, who said Vladimir Vladimirovich is a war criminal in front of Congress. So since we don't hear a word from Trump or Vance, and this is the Secretary of Finance, one of the top placed people in the White House, you don't hear a single word back from that. That is obviously the standard of the Trump White House. We're back to the Biden idiocy at full force. We're creeping there. Trump hasn't said it yet, but but the people right around him are. You got Vance saying, "Oh, the Russians are asking for too much." I'm sorry, we weren't asking. We're telling you how it's going to be, and unless you pull on your big boy pants and you throw in the 82nd to get exterminated and the 101st to get exterminated, run over, and throw in the draft on America and prepare for possible up to a nuclear escalation, shut the fuck up and go sit down in the White House. You're a co-belligerent, absolutely co-belligerent. You're continuing to arm the Ukrainians. We're almost hitting we're hitting almost $500 million from Trump now. Now you can't even say this is some kind of drawdown from Biden. Trump's 50 million plus a 300 million for the F-16s that Congress passed. There's another $500 million for. So you're bad. You're full on Biden. You're full on. Absolutely. You can't even deny that this isn't your war. This is absolutely Trump's war now. That's what you get for voting in America. Close your, pinch off your nose. It stinks like crap, and throw your vote for the same damn thing if you voted for one side or the other. We're just going to make this look for 100 days like we're trying to do something. Now Trump's got this new, I don't know the woman's name, but Trump's got this new spiritual advisor, some evangelical MAGA. Well, I don't know if she's MAGA, but she's some evangelical nut job, who, by the way, talks about how Russia's exterminating the Ukrainian people. You want to look at extermination, look at Gaza. That's extermination. Can we do that to Kyiv? Absolutely, we could do that to Kyiv. Are we doing that to Kyiv? Absolutely not. Targets are always military targets. And no, it's unacceptable to kill one guy by killing 10,000 people around him, or 2,000 people, or 1,000 or 200 people around him, civilians. That's the standard the West uses, and it obviously supports that standard in Israel. That's what Israel does, and it arms Israel. But the U.S. did the same thing in Iraq. The U.S. did the same thing in Afghanistan. The U.S. has done the same thing everywhere, and so has everyone else. Let's not forget the fire terror bombing of Germany. Everybody remembers Dresden. Dresden was the last city. Every German city got firebombed. I'm not defending Hitler. Can't stand the guy. And all the little maggots that keep trying to rewrite history and make him into some kind of hero. Oh, he's trying to save the white people. Oh, by butchering 20 million blonde, blue-eyed, or redhead white people in Russia. Right there, right, yeah, okay, there, buddy. He's trying to save the white people. But the U.S. and the U.K. firebombed every single German city. They firebombed quite a few French cities, too, and villages in the north, wiping them off the face of the earth, civilians included. Let me you understand what firebombing means. First wave of planes coming in are dropping loads and loads of high explosive weapons, and the detonator of every 10th bomb was set to blow up within 2 to 3 days to a week to a month or more after. So when the civilians come back, you get them one more time. So they blow up the cities. They spread out flammable material. Next wave of planes coming in are dropping down white phosphorus bombs. So it burns. And no matter how much water you put on them, they just pop and burn even more. Because you have to deny oxygen to white phosphorus for it to stop burning. So you get this firestorm. The next wave of planes coming in are dropping anti-personnel bombs to kill off the emergency services and kill off the civilians running. And you build up a fire, and this continues for 3 days. And you build up a firestorm where the column of flame goes up 5-6 kilometers. You get trees that are 1.5 meters, 2 meters wide at the edge of the cities get ripped out of the ground, sucked into this vortex. People in the bunkers either incinerate or they asphyxiate because the oxygen gets sucked out in this firestorm. Every single German city was burned. Every single German city. In fact, Berlin was burned 5 times, partially because it's a huge city. Can't get it all. But 5 times before they struck back on London. Again, I'm not defending the Nazis, but this is historical fact. This is what the U.S. and the U.K. did. Out of the 6 million German civilians that died, 5 million of them died because of the U.S. and the U.K. So all those things about, the Red Army came in and massacred. No, if we were anything like you, we would have. By the way, all these people are, the Russians aren't like us. They don't understand the quality of life and the cost of life. Yeah, you better damn well be glad we're not like you. Because if we were like you, we would have exterminated most of you hundreds of years ago. By the time the Russian army entered France in 1812, and that was the leading army, we would have just exterminated the French, which, by the way, the French were told that the Russian army was going to eat their children, literally. Fight to the last because the Russians are coming, they're going to eat your children. If we were anything like you, we would have probably done that. We're not like you, and you better be glad. And as for the Germans, believe me, we could have exterminated every single German, every single animal and bird in Germany in 1945, and nobody would have blinked. Matter of fact, that was a debate in the U.S. from 1942 to about 1944 in the newspapers about exterminating the Germans. And Eisenhower issued an order not to take prisoners once the Rhine River was crossed. His generals disobeyed him, but that was his order. So think about that. If we were anything like you, you wouldn't be here. We were long ago exterminated you. And instead, what did the Red Army do on day one of the Battle of Berlin? They turned around soup kitchens to feed the population of Berlin, those areas under Russian control. The very people that were carrying rounds and are shooting at them just moments earlier. And yes, they hate us for that. Zhukov said very correctly, we've liberated Europe from the Nazis and they will hate us for that forever. And that's obviously the way it is. That is just plain, there you go. I mean, look at the scum that gathered together to celebrate Auschwitz, the liberation of Auschwitz. Not the Russians that liberated Auschwitz, but all the scum like the Lithuanians and the Western Ukrainians that were guards in Auschwitz. Now, it was hilarious watching a veteran or survivor of Auschwitz, Jewish survivor. I don't know where he was. He was either in Israel or he was somewhere in Poland. It was a video channel. That guy's old as, falling apart old. And he's on this video screen in Polish, by the way. And Dudu's standing there with his Nazi buddies. Dudu, who's the whore of Poland, because he whores himself actively to the very people who celebrate the people that murdered 250,000 Poles in today's Western Ukraine. That literally cut out the babies out of women's uteruses and put them in the hands of the dead mothers, who took Polish children in the cold and tied them with barbed wire to trees to let them freeze and die to death. And they took photos of this. This is all stock photos. This is archival photos. Go look it up. You don't have to go far. This isn't somebody's imagination. I mean, obviously it's somebody's sick imagination turned real. The Western Ukrainian sick imagination turned real. And they celebrate these people that did this. This is what Bandera, Shukhevich, and the rest of the scum is. And by the way, Bandera, until he was finally shot dead, lived quite well in München up to about 1956 or 58 when he was finally sent to burn in hell. So think about that. The West Germans and the Americans had no problem with Bandera living in München. That's right. A mass murdering scum. Shukhevich at least was pulled out of a basement as part of the Ukrainian Nazi partisans, the ones that refused to surrender and shot and executed for his crimes. But Bandera had no problem living peacefully with family after murdering up to 1 million people, his organization. So yeah, think about it. The West is a whore organization. The Western elite are scum, and they've always been scum. That's the problem with this. And on the ones that, by the way, start off with, but Russia was allied with Nazi Germany. First of all, Russia was never allied with Nazi Germany. A non-aggression pact, the same one that Poland, under Pilsudski, signed in 1934 with Nazi Germany. Let's not forget that. The same one that France and England signed in 1936 and 1937 with Nazi Germany. Now, Soviet Union and France had a mutual defense pact signed. Yeah, he did, which the French ignored. And when Stalin asked permission for Poland to move his troops through to defend Czechoslovakia, the Poles said there would be an act of war. So Stalin was allied with Czechoslovakia, so he couldn't help them. But by the way, the Czechs just hate us because, we pulled them away from their European unity. The Czechs that, by the way, were producing every third tank that the Germans were using, working in 3 shifts without a single act of sabotage. Think about that. And while the SS were pulling out of Prague and massacring the population, and the Czechs were screaming bloody murder, and this is 1945, Konev took his first Belarusian front, or his second Belarusian front, took an army group out of that, turned around, and in 24 hours they ran from Berlin down to Prague to save Prague. And for that, the Czechs hate us. Not surprising. Should have just left them to the nice, tender hands of at that point, the Hungarians and the Germans. But there you go. That's how history pans itself out. So there you go. So anyway, so now you got Bessett saying Vladimir Vladimirovich is a war criminal. You got Vance saying, "Oh, they're asking for too much." Again, we're not asking. You're being presented with what's going to happen. You can either help this happen fast and not bloody, or you can. I mean, hell, if you want a world war, we'll give you a world war. You can't scare Russians with war. The West has been attacking us since 1012 A.D. Non-friggin' stop. You think we're scared of war? No, we don't want war. But we'll butcher anybody that comes in there because guess what? That's what we've been bred for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of Western aggression. And for some reason, the West can't figure out, just leave us alone. And we're trying to put that, we'll happily put that iron fence back up and just look east because we don't want anything from the West. Oh, we're going to invade the West. Why? Why would we want a collapsed, corrupt, crap continent, the portion we don't own anyways, called Europe? First of all, I mean, look at the statistics. Belgium, 84% of the population under the age of 20 is not Belgian born. Now, that's one I read today that came out. 83.9 to be exact. I mean, Europe is dead. And the Europeans are too spineless to actually get off their arse and take their countries back. And, and have babies. Oh, God forbid that. You can move to Russia and have babies and be a European and a Christian. But Europe's gone. Big chunks of Europe is gone. I see all these Irish as an example, and I've got Irish friends, and I sympathize with them. I see all these people. Oh, Ireland! Look at Dublin. Dublin's. It's your country. Take it back, but you don't. Same with the British. They sit around and whine, and well, you know what? What? Throw out those politicians. It's your country. But just sit and whine. Whatever. It's not. I got no dog in this fight. We'll deal with whomever runs the country next, the next generation. And if we have to speak Arabic or Sinhalese or whatever else to communicate with them, yeah, that's not a big issue. Well, we'll deal with whomever takes over those countries. So, anyways, sorry, got off tangent. And then we've got Kennedy. So we got Fitzpatrick, representative, House of Representatives from Pennsylvania, 1st District, who flies over to Ukraine and shoots artillery shells into Russia. That's a federal. Never mind, he is in violation of the Neutrality Act that forbids U.S. citizens from taking part in any military action against any nation that America is not at war with. But this is America, so everybody's equal before the law is one of those other fairy tales they tell little children and foreigners. I mean, look at when America was murdering Serbs in Albania. I'm sorry, Albania. No, that was Kosovo, which is Serbian. So when America was murdering Serbs in Kosovo, hitting trains, markets, maternity hospitals, oh yeah, let's not forget that. That little bright light of American history. Did the U.S. ever apologize? Hell no. It just serves as just one more small Christian nation sabotaged and murdered for the sake of Islamic Jihad International, Sunni Islamic Jihad International. Shiites don't do an Islamic Jihad. The Sunnis do. And America is more than happy to murder off Christian, as a so-called Christian nation, to murder off small Christian groups to feed the ever beast that they themselves sponsor. So the Albanians, who were illegally in Kosovo anyways, they're basically coming over there first as additional labor. Tito was letting them in. There's another brilliant move to weaken the Serbs, who are the majority of the population in Yugoslavia, by the way, and the Croats after them. So, U.S. had no problem. U.S. absolutely had no problem murdering civilians. So now they're going to read morality lectures. Seriously? And then you've got, so you got Fitzpatrick. Oh yeah, it was what I was getting at that too, before I got sidelined. So during that little bombing campaign under Clinton in 98, was it Clinton or was it Bush? I guess no, it was Bush Shrub Jr. So during that, it was Shrub Jr. So during that campaign, the U.S. government encouraged Americans with Albanian history or dual citizenship to go fight the Serbs in Kosovo, which is even Albania. and just celebrate, even though that was in violation of the Neutrality Act. But any Serbs that went over there would be arrested when they returned in violation of the Neutrality Act. Oh, yeah. There's that myth popped one more time on everyone's equal before the law. So you got Fitzpatrick, who's a representative in the Congress, in the House of Representatives. Is a war criminal. By America's own standards, by America's own law, is a war criminal. Not a word out of the Trump White House. Why? Because they don't mind. That's the reality of the Trump White House. They don't mind. They could have condemned that and said that he's in violation of the law. We'll have an investigation even if they didn't. We don't support this. Not a word. Then you get Senator Kennedy. Oh, Vladimir Putin and the Russians should be turned into fish bait. Or Graham, the combat lawyer there himself. We're going to turn out these sanctions are going to just crush the Russian bones. What sanctions? Russia should counter-sanction, cut off all trade with the U.S. Heavy crude. That shuts down. That shuts down the refineries in Beaumont, Texas. That shuts down refineries in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and Lafayette, Louisiana, because they all need heavy sour crude. 3 places you get heavy sour crude from: Russia's Urals, Iran, and Venezuela. And Venezuela, even if they ask, they can't do it anymore because the U.S. stole all their gold, all their money reserves of Venezuela. And they can't fix, they haven't been able to fix up their oil industry since. So they physically can't pump enough because, equipment degrades with time. And you don't have the money to fix it. Partially, it's their own economic policies, too. I won't take that away from them. But they can't. They can't fix America's hole. So those refineries would shut down instantly. And that you could retool it, but that takes time and billions of dollars. And meanwhile, U.S. gas prices go up to about $6 right on driving season. Oh, yeah, baby. And if Russia cuts all that off, U.S., by the way, let's not forget, U.S. imports almost a third of its oil. And it's hit peak oil as far as the untraditional oil reserves. The Permian Basin is dropping hard. And then what? Titanium, aluminum, cut that out, and processed uranium for all those nuclear power plants. So yeah, let's go, baby. Let's bring this on. But the simple fact that Trump doesn't have a word to say against any of this shows you where he is. Shows his exact position. No matter what he blahs out there. He's too busy beating himself in the chest that he's conquered the Houthis. There's a ceasefire between the U.S. and the Houthis. Only between the U.S. and the Houthis. Because the U.S. can't do crap with the Houthis except drop F-18s, butcher civilians with bombing campaigns, and drop F-18s into the ocean. Well, the aircraft carriers are trying to avoid getting smacked by Houthi missiles. So, cruise missiles, or big drones. So the U.S. has showed itself as a massive failure in the Red Sea. But the problem is the U.S. needs to get unentangled because it's got way too many assets entangled. It's running out of anti-ship missiles. Anti-air missiles for its ships. And it's got Iran coming up as a big war. Now, the Houthis have flat out said, we're going to keep striking Israel because until Israel stops genociding the Palestinians, we're going to continue striking against Israel. That's the position, the exact position that they stated. So it hasn't changed any. So no, the Houthis haven't suddenly collapsed and begging Trump, oh, have mercy on me, the great orange man. No matter how much Trump has beaten himself in the chest. And no, the U.S. did not conquer the Germans either. 80% of the Nazi casualties. And when I say Nazi, I'm not talking Germans. That's Germans, Finns, Hungarians, the official Slovak army, even though they're Slavic partisans fighting against them constantly. More French went to fight against us than fought in the underground, the Charlemagne division. We're talking Italians. We're talking Croats. We're talking Romanians. We're talking the Scandinavian divisions, Skanderberg divisions. We're talking the Bosnian division. We're talking about the Belgians and the Danes that sent SS units to fight us. We're fighting all of them. 80% of the Nazi casualties in all were on the Eastern Front. I mean, you can screw around all you want, but you can't deny that little fact. By the way, Lend-Lease, before anybody starts with that too, by the time the first Lend-Lease was agreed upon, it was agreed upon when the British ambassador went to Klin. Klin is located about 90 kilometers. Well, back then, I guess it was about 120 kilometers northwest of Moscow. The small town of Klin. And there was a large German group that was surrounded there and exterminated. And he went there and he looked at all the destroyed German equipment as Army Group Center was retreating and being pushed back. And he said, I think they may win. And that's what got the Lend-Lease going. As far as Lend-Lease, Russia paid for that. Up to 2016, Russia paid for all of that. 20% of Lend-Lease went to Russia. And as far as dollar value, Mongolia gave us as much as the U.S. did. In meat, in horses, in fur, and hides, and in soldiers. And they did this because we helped save Mongolia in its own time. We helped save Mongolia from the Japanese, who we defeated the first time in 1939. And the Japanese, who we defeated the Kwantung Army in 1945. A million-man army we took out in a week and a half. That was the week and a half after the U.S. dropped the 2 atomic bombs. The Japanese did not surrender. The Japanese surrendered only when the Kwantung Army was gone, when the southern Kuril Islands were gone, and when the Soviet Union was getting ready to start invading the northern Japanese islands, home islands. That's when the Japanese finally surrendered. That Kwantung Army was supposed to be shipped back to the home island, the last big Japanese army, 1 million men. The U.S. was projecting 2 million dead KIAs to take the Japanese main islands. That's Americans dead. And you can count at least another 6 to 7 million wounded. That's what it would have taken to take the Japanese home island. Those atom bombs didn't do it. What did it was a threat that the Soviet Union was coming in. And the Kwantung Army was wiped out. So yeah, take that and shove it up the pie hole. Or down the pie hole. Oh, we did the most. Okay, all right there, buddy. The people that actually know history, I understand you need to say that to a dumbed down audience so they can go, woo! Yeah, okay. Well, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. By the way, and if you noticed how much Trump is now an animal of Zelensky. Zelensky owns Trump. I mean, he owns him totally. He diddled Trump like a cheap piano with his wanker. Because that was a skit of Zelensky's. They even dropped the demands that Zelensky get elected. Imagine that, the president of Ukraine that's now going on his second year post his term. There will be no elections. The Ukrainian government's already stated there will be no elections. There will be no parliamentary elections again this year either. Dictatorship and martial law. They extended for another year. Do you think these people are going to give up war? There's still children left that can be strapped with a bomb and sent into the field. These people, they don't give a damn if there's anybody left alive in Ukraine. Because as long as Ukrainians are dying, they're making money and they get to be alive. That's right. Zelensky ever made peace, he'd get shot by his own people. Plus, he wouldn't be needed by the Americans. The Americans probably shoot him, or the British. They have this tendency of taking out their own little dictators they support everywhere. So there you go. I mean, that's the insanity. That's the insanity. I mean, but then again, what can you say? King Charles III. By the way, every King Charles, if you look historically, has been a disaster for England. I mean, they should outlaw the name after King Charles III. If you ain't getting it the third time around, any King Charles is a total disaster for the UK. King Charles III, who supports the Islamic takeover of England with a two-tier justice system, two-tier policing system, two-tier everything. Why do you think he doesn't say a word about it? Why do you think he was taking all those trips to Turkey since the 90s? Well, the Turkish imams there, they don't hold back. They'll tell you exactly what it is. Go look it up, by all means. Go look it up. Look at what they've been saying about King Charles, a fellow traveler of theirs. But King Charles saluted the Nazis that marched, the Ukrainian Nazis that marched in the parade, in the May 8th parade in England. But then again, Azov, an SS brigade, Their people came into Parliament. There were all the parliamentarians and Prime Minister I guess Boris Johnson was a prime minister by that point, but Boris Johnson included, or was he? He's prime minister at that point still. They took photos with him, and there is a flag. It was a big pride moment for them. They got Nazis finally. They got real live Nazis in Parliament. I mean, my God, that's almost on the level of the Canadian Parliament there clapping for Nazis, congratulating them. They got flat out, and they can't say they don't know the Azov Brigade is not a Nazi brigade. I mean, my God, these guys wear swastikas everywhere they can stitch them onto, or paint them onto, or tattoo them onto. So, yeah, but there you go. That's the head of state. That is the head of the UK. It's not the prime minister's the head of the UK. It is the king, or the queen, in this case, the king. And don't let that ever confuse yourself. The military and the police, they all give allegiance not to Parliament, but to the king. He has the authority. So there you go. There you go. So no matter what they say, that's the reality that you're looking at. The UK, he saluted the Nazis because he was proud of them. They're his people. So what else can you say about that? Now we've got the India strikes. India struck camps in Pakistan. Pakistan is retaliating with artillery strike. But the thing is Pakistan's actually pretty out of ammunition, which should piss the Chinese off quite a bit. The Chinese provide most of the ammunition in Pakistan, but since Khan was ousted by the Americans, by the American CIA and deep state back in April of 22, because he wanted peace and prosperity, and they got Sharif in, who wanted war, backed by the Pakistani military. Not the people, the military. Khan was the most popular prime minister that ever sat on the seat in Pakistan. And they had to put him away for 14 years to keep this popularity from flaring back up. And Sharif sold off most of the rounds off to Ukraine, which is suicidal considering Pakistan, all of Pakistan's neighbors hate Pakistan except for the Chinese. And they're not that big on the border, on the northeast. It's not just Hindu India. It's Shia Afghanistan, and it's Sunni Afghanistan and Shia Iran. They've all fought with Pakistan. They all have border skirmishes with Pakistan. They all despise Pakistan. Pakistan has big problems. The only way Pakistan grows is if Russia's security corridors, Russia's security and prosperity corridors grow. Now, Russia's now shipping LNG by truck through Afghanistan. There's 2 routes that have been agreed upon into Iran and then shipping them off to India. Now, routes through Pakistan and into India, that would bring prosperity to everybody, including cheap energy to both Pakistan and Afghanistan that are flowing through into India. And then there's no reason for war because people are making money off of transition energy resources and getting those cheap energy resources for their own development. No energy, no development. That's how human history goes. So there you go for that. But so the Americans are there pushing from all sides, no matter what Trump says. Also, now like peace, but yeah, push for war. He's pushing because this pits the Indians against the Chinese, and that's 2 members of BRICS. Pakistan was asking Russia to support them from in 2023 to membership in BRICS. Of course, while Pakistan now, as an American client, is selling weapons and ammunition to Ukraine to fight Russia. Hypocritical as hell. Oh, yeah. That's why Russia's not running too hard to save Pakistan at the moment. Even though Pakistan, 2 days ago, in the Pakistani ambassador here in Moscow to TASS, which is the which is the official government news agency, said that we want Moscow to mediate. Not America, by the way, to mediate, but Moscow to mediate. But look at from the U.S. If this devolves into a nuclear exchange, first of all, this undermines both Russia and Iran economically. And if they can't get China and India to exterminate each other, at least China or at least India and Pakistan can exterminate each other. It still gets rid of one of the 2 big Asian juggernauts that America doesn't have to deal with. And if they can get the Indians to self-emulate, then that's all great and fine. Right. They prefer that the Indians and the Chinese did it, or at least the Indians were able to knock the Chinese out and then get rid of the Indians. Because if the Indians, any Indians, think for a second that America is going to tolerate a strong India, America doesn't tolerate anybody. The only people America tolerates is people on the plantation. Well, think about it this way. A nuclear exchange between Pakistan and India is going to set off a chain reaction of 200 to 300 million, if not more, refugees flooding in every single direction from that nuclear holocaust. Think what's going to happen to Southeast Asia when 200, 300 million Indians go flooding that way, and 20, 30 million Pakistanis go flooding into Afghanistan and Iran, and into China, Western China. So a mass nuclear genocide for America is a win-win. Absolutely. Total destabilization. Quite a few economies. Quite a few states. And maybe even parts of China. So if you don't think the people in Washington are that jaded, are that satanic, well, you're seriously, seriously naive. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. Washington will not stop at anything when it comes to genocide. They quite enjoy genocide. Human misery is what feeds these people. So there you go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I won't be bothering you for anymore. Beating you upside the head with my rhetoric. Have a great 9th of May, Victory Day. Don't forget what it really is all about. The sacrifice and the hope for a bright future. That's what it's about. And people like Zelensky are that poisonous viper that grew up. And all those Nazis the U.S. under Operation Paperclip brought in, yeah, think about how much they influenced the U.S. government. And the people that are in power now. Yep. And then there's Mertz. But that's for a different story at a different time. God bless. Cheers.